rehearsal. He's like, yeah, just jump in the van. Now, you have to remember what I look like. I'm wearing a size 1, ladies. And, yeah. I'm wearing a size 1, that means I'm really skinny, guys. And, you know, full face makeup. I mean, have you ever seen pictures of David Bowie when he was Ziggy Stardust? Yeah, okay, I've got a haircut like that. I've got face makeup on like that. You know, dressed a little goofy. I'm going to rehearsal, and I carry a purse, actually, because I can't put my cigarettes and all that stuff in my pants pockets. Very practical, right? You guys wear backpacks. So, I open up the van door and I jump in, man. You should have seen these guys. Holy crap, they're counting all the demons that just walked in. I have discernment like they do, like they did now. See what I'm saying? I jumped in that van and I know these guys were like going, holy crap, the apocalypse. Something, you know. I mean, I saw it on their face. I see it all the time. This is my job. My job is to walk into a situation and make you extremely uncomfortable because you're the norm, you're the status quo. You are the demographic, and I'm not. And that's what makes me cool, and you are freaking idiots. Do you not understand that? That's why I'm wearing what I'm wearing. Because I know that when I walk in, you're cringing, and you're freaking out. I make you uncomfortable, and you and the wife want to get up and take the kids out of the restaurant, or out of the store, or wherever I just walked into. This is my job. I do it very well, and I'm also armed to the teeth because I'm also an artist. And I'm a chameleon, and I'm really freaking good. And I can look right through you and tell you who you are, and you don't even know who you are. See, this is the package. This is what's going on. So I get into the van, and these guys just lose their freaking minds on their faces. They didn't like say or they didn't, you know, but I could tell. They're like, their demon sensors are just going off the charts, and they're probably counting them, like I said, because I don't know how many I had, but I know I had at least one. And. So I said, you know, so this one guy actually goes, hey, have a seat here. I'm like, I know. And he engages me in conversation, a legitimate conversation. Everybody else is just like, what the hell is going on? You know, why is this thing in our van? And then this is Carl, my uncle's name is Carlos. This is Carlos's nephew. I mean, this is interesting stuff, I'm sure. It's 1978, by the way. We hadn't, TBN hadn't hit airways yet, I don't think. When did they come out? So it's a very interesting dynamic, I'm sure, that's occurring in the van. I remember it. So this guy actually engages me in conversation, polite conversation. I remember the man. He's a Guatemalan man, an aristocrat, actually. His name is Francisco. Well, now let's jump back. I'm in Guatemala. Remember, I'm there on a Sunday night. On Wednesday, I actually am going to be enrolled in the school for American missionary kids. This is going to be, oh man. And it's going to be good. This is going to be like, it's like fish in a barrel, literally. But it's going to be fun. I'm going to be able to mess with all these minds. Anyway. I meet my wife that day, my future wife. I meet her that in the morning of that same day. A very interesting story in itself. But that night, my uncle's church was hosting a ministry from San Diego called Peculiar People. I don't even know they exist, a healing ministry. So what my uncle was doing, my uncle's church, what they were doing was they were hosting this ministry from San Diego and going to churches in all the different, like, real impoverished areas of Guatemala City. There's a lot of them. So that night they're going to be in Zone 1, which is the worst, a church called Prince of Peace, and you know they're having this healing service. I had the reference experience at the time, and being the smart man that he was with the apostolic blah blah blah, he goes, "Hey, why don't you bring your guitar and sit in with the worship band?" Now, who asks somebody who asks somebody in this state, in this place and time, to sit in with the worship band? You don't do that. Well, he did. He was that smart. So I brought my guitar, I sat in with the worship band, and I thought, wow, you have probably the stupidest God on earth, because I already know what the song is going to do, and I've never heard it before. You know, it's like, this is what you have. This is what you get. This is at the extent of your creativity and songwriting and arranging. I mean, it was, I've never played the song before. And look, I know what you're going to do. This is your God. Ooh. Wow. And And so we do I sing with the worship band, and the guy starts speaking. He's American from San Diego, so I don't need a translator, and he's talking. I actually remember something he said. He said that in order to be that conduit of healing to an individual, you have to show compassion. It has to be compassion on that individual you're praying for. That's how this is going to happen. I don't know why I remember that. I do, but wow, I remember that. And then afterward, they lined up all these people, all this Guatemalans, and we're going to pray for them. They're going to be healing, and people are going up to the mic, and because they have a translator, blind eyes are opened, and deaf ears, and somebody grew back an arm and all that. And I'm just watching this going on, and my uncle comes up to me and goes, "So, what do you think about all this stuff?" I'm like, "Hey, whatever floats your boat, dude. Because you got to remember, I'm good with Jesus. I know him, he knows me. I love him, he loves me. I don't hurt anybody. We're good to go." So, what do you think about all this? Well, whatever floats your boat, man. And he looks at me. Well, he didn't look at me. He looked right through me. He goes, "Come on, Alan. You know what's going on here." He goes, "What do you have to lose?" I thought about that for a minute. What do I have to lose? I'm in a freaking third world country. I can't even drink the water. I don't know the language. One-way ticket. I have been absolutely disowned by my entire family. I mean, I've been punked. Big time. And there's no cameras. It's not, what I'm saying? They're not going to say, "Hey, it's not really true." "Hey, gotcha." No, I'm screwed. And he said, "What do you have to lose?" I actually don't have anything to lose, do I? I've already lost it all. Thank God I didn't have to fall off a freaking cliff.
You are faster.
No, you do know you are of noble birth, and you are a royal priest through your brother. In order because of that. You do know that, right?
Yeah.
All right. So I have nothing to lose. So he goes, "All right." He goes, "Well, do you want to pray?" Or something like that. I'm like, "Yeah, sure." So he didn't pray for me. He goes, "I'm going to go get Frank." I don't know what he's talking about. It takes him about 20 minutes for this guy to show up to pray for me. I don't understand why my uncle didn't pray with me or, with me. So he ends up getting this guy that engaged me in conversation 2 years ago in the van, Francisco Bianchi, an aristocrat, literally. And him and his wife show up to talk to me, like I said, for about 20 minutes. And has anybody heard this before? Awesome. And they're in an argument. They're fighting. They're like full-on marital bliss in front of me, and she's in Spanish, blah, 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 and he's like, "No," and he's like really stern in English. He's telling her, "No, Molly, you have to tell him, you have to tell him." And he's a real animated guy. And they turn around and look at me and he goes, "Molly, my wife, she received a word from the Lord from you, from the Spirit, and it's in English, and she doesn't speak English." And I'm like thinking, what, was I born again yesterday? You're pulling a fast one on me? Right, like I'm stupid enough to believe you that your wife doesn't speak English and something about a word from the Lord. What does that mean? It's like, it didn't faze me. He's all animated. They're fighting about it. Apparently what they're fighting about is she got this word from the Lord in English, and she doesn't speak English. And she's intimidated to actually speak it to me, and he's insisting that she does speak it to me because she got it. And she doesn't want to because she doesn't speak English, and he's telling her that she has to give me the word because the word came to her. That's what's going on. I don't understand this because I have no reference experience. So, the most elegant woman, man, this woman becoming, when I say aristocrats, I mean aristocrats. She gets down on one knee, she takes my hand, and she goes, all I remember is she said, "Alan, Jesus loves you." And then I don't remember anything else except for, "Don't resist." Okay, that's all I remember. I never heard Molly Bianchi speak English again after that. So Frank's real animated. He wants to. We're gonna pray. They do the whole prayer thing. Repeat after me. Use it in your heart thing. And see how I do that? It's so weird. And then when I finished praying, I opened my eyes, and something had physically happened to my eyes. I didn't know what was going on except that it was cool. And I go, "Frank, something happened to my eyes." So he's thinking I'm speaking Christianese, but I don't know what Christianese is yet. I'm like, no, something's happened to my eyes. Everything's brighter, everything's clearer. And I said, it's as if I had some mesh lining on my eyes, and it's now gone. I knew nothing about Paul and scales and Damascus. I had no reference experience. Something physically happened to my eyes. I something came off my eyes. Is the only way I can explain it. So it was brighter, clearer, realer. So I had this physical manifestation happen. All that to say, I had a real Jesus thing happen in my life when I was 15, a month shy of my 16th birthday in Central America. And I told God, I am yours, 100%, completely, entirely, utterly, no strings attached. Can I say what I really said to him? But don't fuck with my music. That's what I told him. That's what I told him. I am 100% yours. I will serve you till the day that I die. No strings attached. But hands off of my music. I've got plans. That's how I got saved. And he's going, okay. I'm down there for over 3 years, and I am sitting at the seat of apostles and prophets, and I am, man, experiencing and seeing things that most American Christians are not going to see and experience in their lifetime because you're on this side of the border. Because we don't believe in this stuff. Do we, Ian? Ian can share an amazing testimony with you if you ask him. I encourage all of you to talk to Ian. This is Ian Hellerman, bass player in the band that we have together. I would encourage you guys to ask him about a testimony that he has regarding the supernatural in the United States of America. So because we don't believe in this stuff, well, it's not going to happen. That's as simple as that. Jesus, when he revealed himself in the synagogue in Nazareth, they said, this is Joseph and Mary's son. He's the carpenter's son. How can he possibly be saying he's the Messiah? And it says in Scripture that because of their unbelief, he was unable to do many miracles there that day. Their unbelief made him impotent. He said that he was able to heal a little bit. I mean, our unbelief hinders and makes God and his power and authority in our life impotent. Well, down there, they know there's a spiritual realm because it's demonic, man. Everywhere you turn, it's demonized. And they're manifesting left and right. We're talking the witches and the warlocks and all that spiritualism that's going on. They know it's true. So there's got to be a positive side of this. So because of that, God's free. The Holy Spirit's free to do like real stuff. So I'm sitting at the feet of apostles and prophets, and I'm seeing everything but the dead being raised. And that, well, almost just about happened in Ecuador. But anyway, I'm there for about 3+ years. I get introduced to Christian rock and roll, Christian music, which I thought, well, this is really lame. These people are 5 to 10, no, not Petra, thank God. 5 to 10, I wouldn't have liked it anyway. 5 to 10+ years that I can think of behind the times, behind, you know, and there's not even anything new wave. I mean, there's not even new wave, let alone punk or anything like that. So I'm introduced to, you know, Phil Keaggy, Paul Clark, The Love Song, The Way, Chuck Gerard, all the real guys from the early 70s, Larry Norman. A band called Daniel Amos, led by a man called Terry Taylor, by the name of Terry Taylor. I'm introduced to them. Keith Green, Michael and Stormy O'Mardigan, Phil Keaggy, second chapter of Acts, things of that nature. So I'm introduced to this music, and I'm forcing myself to have my favorites. Summer of '81, we go back to the United States. Remember how we would go to the States for those conferences in the summer? Well, my cousin and I go with him in '81. And we go to a Christian music store, and man, it's like we're like drug addicts getting everything we possibly can. We discovered U2 right after October came out because Island Records promoted it and sold it as a Christian record, October. So we were able to get Boy in October at the same exact time in 1981. That was awesome. Barnabas, the Alarmist Chronicles, #1, Alarma came out that year. Mommy Doesn't Love Daddy Anymore, Resurrection Band. So we're like, man, we're getting everything we can. If it looks cool, Andy McCarroll and the Sonic Bonds from Ireland, we got it because we were starving for real music. And if they had a skinny tie, it's probably going to be closer than that guy, whatever that guy was, you know. So we're desperate for music. And I remember telling my cousin, because I had Shotgun Angel, right? Because that was the last record Daniel Amos made in 1977 on Larry Norman's rock.
Horrendous Disc.
Right, Horrendous Disc, but on what label? Right,
Solid Rock.
That was the last record Daniel Amos made in 1977. So when we went to the U.S. in '81, they had a new one called Alarma Chronicles. It They were in litigation about that record. And this came out at the same time for 3 years. It was in court for 3 years. Larry kept working on it, and they said, no, it's done. So it's in court for 3 years. So we had Shotgun Angel, which had some incredibly promising music on there. The Whistler is going to do a number on you. And Meal. I mean, it's like, wow, this is real music. And it came out like in '76. And then we get Horrendous Disc, and then we got Alarma. So it's like, man, there's some hope. So if I remember telling my cousin, if I ever get back to the United States of America, and if I ever get back to the States and do music again, I want this guy, Terry Taylor. I want to work with him. I said that. Flat out said that. I called it. I get back to the United States of America in February of '83. I've been gone a little over 3 years. And I'm actually just stopping in LA because I'm en route to a community. Commune might still scare people off, that word. In Colorado. Well, there's a delay in my going there and blah, blah, blah. So in that process of delay, one of the elders of this church I was going to, I started going to a church that my brother was going to in Burbank, comes up to me and goes, hey, what would it take to, we want to start a music ministry. What would it take to do that? So I told him, And so within a matter of about 3 or 4 weeks, I was in a recording studio. See how Satan works? He's so good at what he does. I mean, I admire how good he is at what he does. Because he is so incredibly good at it. I mean, man, I'll just talk about that for freaking days. On how good he is and how we don't even know it half the time. He's real good. I'll give you some examples of that as we go forward. So instead of going to Colorado, to a community, I make a decision, an executive decision. I'm going to stay here and do this music ministry that this church is willing to fund. Stupid. So that's what I do. So we're in the studio. Within 3 or 4 weeks, we make a 2-song demo. I got an action plan now. I know how to do this. This is easy. And I track down Terry Taylor. And we meet, slip him the demo. And by June, we're in one of the biggest. You gotta remember, Christian music started in Orange County. Then it moved to Nashville years later. So we go to one of the biggest recording studios down there, Whitefield Studios, with Tom Roy. These are big names you'll never know because you don't know your secular history. I damn know for sure. No, you don't know your Christian music history. You have no idea how you guys got here, do you? It's weird. I do. Thank you. I think it's really important. I mean, you can't be a good businessman if you don't know what your business is, for example. It applies to your walk too. So, anyway, we're going to do this thing with Terry Taylor. We do it with Terry Taylor. He's actually trying to get us a deal. We start talking to Star Song, and they actually decided not to sign us because they gave all their money to Petra that year.
Money lost back.
I was 19 years old. I'm 19 years old, and we started this ministry to real grassroots ministry to the homeless punks on Hollywood Boulevard, Hollywood. I go back to my own. I go back to who I know because they need Jesus too. Right? Everything's good so far. So we're going down to Hollywood Boulevard on Friday and Saturday night and hanging out with the street punks. These are punk rockers. These are, I'm 19. They're anywhere between 16 and 25, 16 and 28. Street. They're living on the street. A lot of them are living in an abandoned hotel called Hotel Hell. Been there once. Absolutely, incredibly demonic. And they're just hanging out on the street. They're street kids. They have nowhere else to do. So they hang around on Hollywood Boulevard on Friday and Saturday nights. What's it called? Begging for money. What's it called? Panhandling. All the tourists. So we go down there. We start hanging out with them just to be their friend. We're just loving on them. And we start building relationship and friendships with them, getting on a first-name basis. We hook up with, we meet this guy his name's Richard, and he's doing, somehow in his family, he's got an inheritance, an old wig factory. It's literally an old wig factory from like the early 1920s or 1930s. And he has, so he has access to the building, and so he's doing Bible studies for punk rockers in this wig factory in Hollywood. Anybody ever see the American Hardcore movie? There's a movie called American Hardcore.
Yes.
It's about the punk rock American Hardcore scene, 1980, 1985. There's an actual little segment about Richard and the wig factory and John Macias, who was singing for a band called Circle One. Well, we were hanging out with Richard and John from Circle One. And so now we were able to bring food over the hill and have a place to distribute it at the wig factory to all these homeless punks, street punks. Funny how it was weird. About 3 years ago, we were talking about Hungry Hearts, and I was sitting there thinking, for Shondell, my oldest daughter, Shondell, she started a homeless ministry when she was 16. We found out she had been going under the freeways here in Dallas by herself. Yeah. I was like, what's wrong with her? And it took me like 3 years to go, and the Lord goes, what were you doing when you were 19? I'm like, this is just what we do. It's in our DNA. Interesting. But you don't see it, but you have to. So, that's what we're doing. We're hanging out with the punks, friending them, just loving on them. And now we're bringing them food. We're not involved in any factions, because back then, LA was considered the worst punk scene in the U.S., and it was the most violent. What happened was, in the early 80s, is the long-haired jock mentality got into the scene. That's what happened. You guys got involved. And you guys ruined it and brought violence. That's what happened. That's exactly what happened. And so it's the most violent scene. So we've got FFF, Fight for Freedom, we've got that gang, we've got the Lads, LA Death Squad in LA, we've got the Hollywood Punks, we've got Suicidal. Everybody, you've heard of Suicidal Tendencies, right? Did you know that was a punk rock band from Venice Beach, California? Yep. Institutionalized? 1983?
Yep.
Okay. You have Suicidal Force, so then that's a whole faction there. That's even weird because they're like cholos. They're lowriders, punks. Now we're getting really confused, and they're violent, right? So there's all this freaking. Then you've got Nash, North American Skinheads. It's just this place, and it's all in LA. So you go to a show, people are dying. It's kind of pretty volatile. It actually is. And the big hangout in Hollywood at the time is Cafe de Grand. That's where we all converge. A lot of good bands, man. And so we're doing this homeless street thing, and I'm like, we need to do a band. Because there's only one band that exists at the time with a positive message, spiritual message, and that's a Rastafarian band called the Bad Brains from Washington, D.C. Bad Brains? Who knows who the Bad Brains are? HR. Right. Okay. Watch this. Those that raise their hand regarding Bad Brains, please do not raise your hand next. Who has heard of Jane's Addiction? Who has heard of Red Hot Chili Peppers? Who has heard of 311? Who has heard of Living Color? Who has heard of Beastie Boys? They don't exist without the Bad Brains. See how that works? All those bands I just mentioned that all of you know, and I'm sure there's more, would not exist without the Bad Brains. It's because of the Bad Brains. Well, they have the Rastafarians. Who knows what Rastafarianism is? Ever heard of Bob Marley? It's a cult. You have not heard of Bob Marley?
Yeah, we have.
So they're talking about Babylon. They're talking about Israel. They're talking about Zion. They're talking about Old Testament prophet stuff, right? But they're not Christians. It's a cult. They're not right. It's a cult. For various reasons, it's a cult. Because the second coming of Jesus hasn't come in the form of Haile Selassie, the Ethiopian dictator. That's how you know someone you're involved with when it's a cult. When Jesus came back, and he didn't. And he's a Russian-backed dictator. So we need to start a band for these people with a positive spiritual message that's actually like not a cult, but real. That's what we did. So we started this little punk rock band called Scattered Few. And within 9 months, I started smoking pot and sleeping with this girl, and yeah. And that wasn't good. So now I'm all jacked up. We're not doing Scattered Few anymore. I started doing death wave, kind of dark wave band. I got really freaking huge in LA. Called CBA. So we're doing like all this crazy, big, huge stuff in LA with radio and shows, and we're playing with all these. It's just, you know, I'm doing ministry. And I pervert myself. Be careful, little eyes, what you see. Be careful, little hands, what you do. Be careful, little mouth, what you say. Little ears, what you hear. Within 9 months of walking on water and glowing in the freaking dark, I'm smoking cannabis sativa and screwing a 5'10" Danish girl? What happens? How does that happen? Because all I have to do is exactly what I did yesterday, today. I'm sorry, she wasn't Danish, no, it was Brigitte Nielsen. She was German. Same difference. Right? As long as I do what I did yesterday, today, I'm okay. Right? Seek first. Today. So tomorrow I just need to do exactly what, and I'm good. And I remember the moment I realized, oh, how did I get over here? Because see, Scripture says, it only takes a little bit of leaven. Well, it was just a little bit of leaven. And now I'm like, way over there. And now I'm like living with a girl, and she's pregnant. Not the other girl, but the one from Guatemala. Remember I told you I met my wife? Now I'm living with her, and she's pregnant. She's maybe 19, maybe. All right? So see, it's just getting worse. See, I just went from 1983, 85 to 80, in 1986, by 1985, right, what's that, 2 years? Living with a girl who's pregnant from Guatemala, that girl, right, because this other girl, we got married and annulled in 11 months, that's a nightmare. And now I'm in a dark wave band for the next 3 years, but, I'm doing drugs, I'm living with a girl, we have 2 kids before we get married. I'm like nowhere near where I was just 3 years ago. Everything I built, right, is gone. Why? What did I do? I'm going to stay in LA and do music. Is that a bad thing? No. Absolutely not. But I didn't understand something that I guarantee you, do not understand. I know for a fact you don't understand. And that's everything about this music thing is demonic. What do I mean by that? Well, how many of us do music just for the sheer pleasure of it? You're a liar. Oh, good, nobody raised their hand. It does something to us. It does something for us. We like the adulation. We like the crowds. We like the CDs and the magazines and the radio and the touring and the adulation again. And man, I know I did. I know Mikey did. No. We do what we do because we like it. We're humans. We don't do what we don't like to do. It's basic common sense. We only do what we like to do. And so we're pursuing this thing. I don't know if I've been doing this a lot longer than a lot of you have even been alive. And I don't think I know very many bands, or I've ever met a band that didn't do this not to become a rock star. That's your goal. To become a rock star or a celebrity or whatever word you want to use. That's your goal. Or to work with the next Switchfoot. You know how much money you would make if you were managing or representing a Switchfoot? That's good living. So you're either, you see what I'm saying? You're either on this side of the industry looking for, trying to work with a band that's going to blow up, like a Switchfoot or a POD or a Alex City. Right? Or you're that band that wants to, be as big as a Phil Wickham or a POD or a Switchfoot. don't understand is that this mountain that we're so enamored with, this mountain, I have seen people trade in their lives, their wives, their marriages for that mountain. I've seen it firsthand. This mountain and getting to the top of it is so important to me that I will actually sacrifice my marriage and my children and even my God. But I'm doing it for God. See, that's the beautiful thing about it. That's the best thing about it. That's how good he is at what he does. I have known more people that will sacrifice their wives, their children, and their relationship with God, all in the name of God, pursuing their Christian music dream. How is that possible? I don't know. Ask Mikey. He's loving that one because we've seen it hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times. I started doing this when I was 19 at a very high level, at a very high professional level. I'm talking about Christian music now, okay? I've done this for a very long time at that level. Since the age of 18. Do you know how many bands that is? Do you know how many bands I've known? Did you know that at least 80% of my contemporaries from 1980 to 85 are either not married, alcoholics, divorced, and or not even saved anymore? Am I right? Because you know a lot of these guys. See, you've worked with them too.
Self-professing, just so they know you're not sitting in judgment
Yeah.
like they would tell you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jesus thing, I don't do that anymore. I'm not saying they're not believers because I don't believe they're believers. They're actually not believers anymore, by their own admission. 80+% of them, I mean, the majority of them are not even saved anymore. Aren't even walking with the Lord anymore. They're not doing that anymore. They're not married with their original wife, that's for damn sure. They're estranged from their children. A lot of them have alcohol and drug issues. Wow. And a lot of them, they weren't even very good. That's the weirdest thing to me is that you're willing to sacrifice your marriage, your walk with the Lord for a crappy band? That's so weird to me. And that's because we don't understand what it is that we think we need so badly. We really believe that we're supposed to be doing this thing, that God has called us to do this thing. He doesn't care about your stupid little band. I love saying that. He doesn't care about your stupid little band. You could care less. You probably suck. That's my opinion. I haven't even heard you. Why? How could I possibly say that? Because I've heard a lot of music. And it's not even good. But you know what? He absolutely cares about you.
Yes. Come on.
He absolutely cares about you. He is desirous for you. He loves you so much. I mean, come on. Your band isn't that good. I guarantee you, I promise you. Your band isn't that good. It just isn't. I know it isn't. I know it isn't because you haven't heard of any of the bands that I like. I guarantee you your band isn't that good and it's not worth your life. It just isn't. Especially when you're walking into this thing. I wish this is where I need a flag. And you're waving this Christian band flag, or I'm going to be a minister of Jesus with my music. And you don't fast, and you don't pray, and you don't go to church, and you don't even read the Bible, and you're screwing your girlfriend, and you might be drinking more than you possibly or should be. Do you understand what I'm saying? You're deceived. You're absolutely deceived. How did you get so deceived? I know how I got deceived. See, we have this goal. I had a goal, and I told God he had no rights to that. Remember that when I got saved? Yeah, he had no rights to this part of my life. I have plans. So I have this goal, and I'm going to meet that goal because I'm really good at what I do. And I have been there more times than one single human should have access to that room. You're lucky if you get one shot at this thing. I've had multiple shots at this thing. And it's only God's grace that it didn't happen. If it had happened, I wouldn't be here, the man of God that I am today. And there's a reason why. Because this goal that I think this desire and goal that I have, it's not that it's not God. Because he's the one that gave us these gifts and abilities and desires. But it says, delight yourself in the Lord. See, it's not bad. It's not that it's not God, but we're perverted. And we pervert it every chance we get. Every chance and opportunity we have, we pervert ourselves. So as I pursue this mountain of entertainment, what I'm not taking into account is the demographic of this mountain. And the demographic of this mountain is compromise and seduction. See, the 7 nations that Joshua was led to go and conquer when he entered the land represent 7 people groups, historically, biblically, and spiritually. And the Hittite people represent compromise. And the first count in the scriptures of this people group is a violent rape. The word, the Bible. They're the people group that manifests on this mountain, compromise. And the spiritual the spiritual power or the spiritual authority of this mountain is the Jezebel spirit, which is seduction. If you have done this at any level for any amount of time, you'll know that what I just said is absolutely correct, that there is seduction and compromise involved. Is there not, Mike? Is there not, Angela? Seduction, and it's sexual seduction. 99% of the time, it's sexual seduction. Why? I know there's something about this thing that girls like. That's one of the reasons why I got into it. I'm not that good looking. I know that. But it's not really work. It's just the power of the charm. And I can do that.
Mine's totally just because I'm good looking.
But sexual seduction is huge in this thing. I mean, hell, even Amy Grant felt like that, didn't she? No, that's a big conversation. And the compromise. You're compromising. You're compromising your beliefs. I mean, you're compromising your marriage. You're compromising your relationships. You're compromising. I mean, we do this. So how does this happen? Well, you've got this monkey on your back called God that you have to appease. And as long as you believe that you're appeasing it, you're okay. See, we're so greatly deceived. We're pursuing our death, and we think we're doing it in the name of God. Remember how we're talking about that? I'm willing to sacrifice everything, even my God, in the name of God. Because for some reason we believe that as Christians and as musicians, we're entitled to a music ministry. Who told you that? Who told you that? My God didn't tell you that. The Bible doesn't tell you that. Maybe your pastor told you that. How does he know? Because if he would have had any discernment, all these pastors can't be right, man. I mean, I know bands that were ordained Calvary Chapel pastors that within 2 years were divorced and then were about to marry their adulterous affair girlfriends. God rules. You can't.
I get it.
Yeah, the mic is videotaped. The other mic is videotaped. You know what I'm saying? I'm not saying that your pastor's wrong, but what I am saying is the majority of us, the vast majority of us, have been told something that doesn't come with any sort of spiritual authority, because if it did, we shouldn't be ending up the way we're ending up. So either they're maybe, okay, let's say they are speaking truth into ours, but then they're neglecting the mentoring and the discipleship to keep us from ending up like that. Or they're not speaking properly, and we're just buying into the deception. I've seen that more than the other one. Does that make sense? Because of the amount of bands. I mean, if I had to weigh the bands, right? The majority of the bands are just doing what they want to do in the name of God because they have a monkey to feed on their back. It's like a drug addict.
Yep. The old, I guess it's the cookie cutter prophecy of, oh, God's going to put you before kings and queens of every nation. Your music's going to be heard by everyone. And he used to glorify God. All people hear is, I'm going to be good people.
Let's
go.
see a blue guitar. Now, how legitimate could that possibly be? But we screwed up, right? Because as soon as we start compromising, see, as soon as we start having adulterous or fornicating, as soon as you start fornicating, you screwed it up. God isn't a fornicating God. That's a major no-no with huge repercussions in both Old and New Testament. It's not just one verse. As soon as you start fornicating and committing adultery, oh, dude, you have stepped outside of any grace regarding what we just said, of going in front of thousands and stuff. Because if that is God, if God did say that, it's going to look a certain way. It's going to look holy and scriptural. It's not going to look like we've done it. And that's why the Christian music scene doesn't exist the way it does anymore. Isn't that an amazing, awesome thing? I think so. Because it's a perverted Ishmael. Are you guys ready to leave or can I finish?
Keep going.
All right. Yeah. It's a perverted Ishmael. See? God's not in that. God's in a holy Isaac. And that's why we do the objective. So as long as I start walking the path of Ishmael, I'm compromised and seduced. Even if it was a legitimate prophecy, it's no longer under, the anointing. You've got to, until you fix it and repent, it's not going to work. And so what? I'm sorry?
You're out of the protection.
Right. So what ends up happening is, what's happened? You've got, we all know the bands, both in the secular and Christian market, that we're talking about. I mean, it just gets, bad things happen. And that's why the divorce and the alcohol and the drugs, and that's not a good witness. That's not a good testimony. It just isn't. That's not God. Scripturally speaking, that's not how it looks. So, I'm in a dark wave band, man, I'm looking at it again. I'm looking at this, I'm looking at it again, and it almost happens. And God just goes, why? Because if you're called, if you're absolutely, legitimately called of God, and you're not walking in His precepts and statutes, and you're not in alignment with Him, He will frustrate all your plans. I know bands that He doesn't love that much, who are hanging by a thread to begin with. They get multi-million-dollar record deals, and now they're lost. Who needs God now? They were poor, striving artists, and their walks were already on a thread. Then they get the big deal. And now they've got money and fame and fortune. They've arrived. Well, who really needs an intimate relationship with God now? I've arrived. See? That happens all the time. Happens all the time. We've seen it a gazillion times. So, but if He really loves you, I mean, you know that everybody's not called, right? When you're called, you are chosen. You know that, right? So that's what I mean by that. Some He loves more than others. Did you know that? I mean, this is scripturally correct. You might not like that, but it's in your Bible. Many are called, few are chosen. Narrow is the way to salvation. It's a restrictive path, Jesus said. And how many find it? Few. So don't tell me I'm whacking out now. No, I'm speaking in alignment with the teaching of Jesus.
Is it love or favor?
Both.
So God's infinite love is capped on some people.
God's infinite love is infinite. But our choice not to love Him, I mean, you know what I'm saying? I can make a choice to go, you know what, thanks, but no thanks, buddy. I'm going to go do my own thing. We don't know how long He'll pursue us, because Scripture also says we have a different measure, we all have a different measure of grace. It doesn't say we all have the same amount of grace. So I might have a 2-liter bottle, but you might have a 55-gallon drum. So if my 2-liter bottle runs out, I'm screwed.
Yeah. But I mean, I'm talking about as far as love. You're saying, God loves some more than others.
Right, but do you know what I mean?
Yeah, what you're saying, yeah.
It's not like He didn't love Pharaoh, but He did go before Moses and harden Pharaoh's heart.
Yeah. But I mean, would you call that love, or would that be just discipline, or just
It's a combination of love, favor, discipline, but
He chastises who he loves.
According to God's purposes.
But there's also free will. But there's also free will. Right?
Which is secondary. God's efficacious. He knows how to get done what he wants to get done.
Right, that
But
too.
he's still sovereign.
It has nothing to do with us. It has to do with him.
I think it has, but we are a part of the equation. Yes, you're right, but we also are a part of the equation.
But I mean,
Yes,
even
free will.
if we step out of it, God's going to get done what he has to get done.
Yes.
With or without us.
With or without us.
I mean, I think it's the whole video of your chosen. It's two
Right.
answers to that call.
So what's the answer? Cooperate.
Yeah.
That's the answer. Cooperate.
Yeah.
You know? So if you're a band hanging on a thread when it comes to your salvation, and you get the big, huge freaking deal, the reason why I use the term, he doesn't love them as much as, let's say, the other band, the reason why I say that is because what ends up happening the majority of the time, those guys never come back. It ends up destroying them. Because you got to remember, some are Paul, right? Deliver them up to Satan, man.
But there's a different path. That's like saying the people of Ishmael are cursed and screwed for the rest of their life.
But it does say
He
that.
still loves them.
But he still loves them. And
There's
Egypt, he
still
calls,
a plan for
and he
them.
calls Egypt
It's not
his
the
son.
coolest road.
Right.
It's a redemptive road, not a promised, blessed, protected
Absolutely.
road.
Because he
But they can
does,
still come back.
absolutely, because he does love
He
Ishmael.
still has, yeah.
'Cause he said he
wishes
calls-
that none would perish.
Right. That's his desires that. But he knows that they're going to. You know, Jesus says 5 out of 10 virgins don't make it. That sucks. You know, 1 out of 3 stewards are cast out.
I think that, you know, as I'm listening to you talk, Alan, it's interesting how the Holy Spirit ties things in, because I keep going back to what we started with. You can't serve two masters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's really the bottom line. And there is a point where you make a choice. You'll love one and you'll hate the other. And the reason we talk about that here and now is really because the idea of balance, if it means that we will serve God on the one hand and serve our dream or our career or our music or really anything, serve anything else, without, you can't do both. At the end of the day, whether you meant to or not, you will have chosen. That's really the bottom line. And you may be surprised to find out it turns out you didn't choose God after all. And this is one of those things where it's probably a lot of terminology, because we could debate about how deep is God's love, as if we could provide a definitive answer for that.
I think the question is, how deep is our love?
Are
we going to do it regardless? I mean,
Right.
And I saw this on the tours. I mean, I've led the Extreme Tour for several years, and it was, I can tell you how many artists came out on the road, and they were like, oh, God's going to provide a way for me to be out here. I don't know. And I've asked them, I was like, what if he doesn't provide it? What if he brought you out here to suffer? What if God makes it to where you sell no CDs whatsoever? Are you still going to do the tour? And actually, I think it was, what's his name? The guy that had the big blow up on the bus.
Our hip-hop friend.
Yeah, him. He was the one who was like, oh, I don't know. I mean, take away the promise of heaven and threat of hell. Are we still serving God? Yes. Take away the promise of success and being seen by thousands, or the threat of, hanging on that thread and losing salvation. Are we still going to serve? Is God worthy enough in of himself to say, everything I have is for you?
You're jumping ahead of my story.
Sorry.
Damn.
It does come down to that. It really does. So in '86, we have a baby, and I have to start repenting fast because now another life is involved. My choosing for myself is one thing. My wife or my girlfriend at the time choosing to go along with it is another thing. But now we have an innocent child in the loop. So we have to. I'm like, I freak. I got to go figure this thing out. It takes about 6 years to get to a point where I can actually start rebuilding. That's not. Don't do that. Don't take that amount. Well, you actually don't have that kind of time. One of the truth. You don't have 20 years to squander like I did. Maybe you have 20 months. Anyway, don't squander your time. Just don't do that. It's stupid. So, right. See, what I do now is, like we're talking about, is I have to discern what God's will is immediately so I can run to it as fast as I possibly can to accomplish it immediately. That's what I do today. So, I do this dark wave band, and then we decided to start doing Scatter Few again, and then by now, the Christian industry has caught up enough to actually get a record deal. They've actually gone backward. There's no way that band can get signed today. No way. But as in '83, it wasn't going to happen in '83. In '89, it did happen, but we were still way freaking ahead of the curve. But it did happen, and so it blows up, blah blah blah, and I'm having to deal with the fact that okay, I'm with this girl, but we're married now, and we have 3 kids, but we did get married, but I'm still struggling with her and stuff like that, some drugs, and so we take care of that. But as it's growing and building, you're gone all the time. You're touring all the time. And I'm not having issues on the road with girls or nothing like that. That never happened. I wasn't going to do that. That's just silly. But, as you're out there doing what you're doing, your wife is by herself. And so it didn't settle well with me. How am I going to be this great Christian or whatever guy, music guy, and, end up losing my marriage? And I mean, that doesn't jive. So the reason why you don't know who I am, but you know who my friends are, is because I actually started making choices that would affect my career, but that would save my family and my marriage. So I had to make choices that really messed up my career because this was important to me. There was no way I could hit all this success. I mean, POD exists because I screwed up. Does that make sense? I mean, you will be replaced. You will be passed over. They were fans of our band before they even were a band. And when I think the first time I saw them, I was like, crap, look at this. Look what happened here. It was very interesting. But anyway, and we love those guys. I mean, I'm a freaking news lover. So, I made choices that were really going to hurt my career. And it did. But unlike a lot of my friends, I can say that I'm still with the same girl. I am. I'm with the same girl that I was with in 1985. The majority of my friends can't say that. And the majority of those guys can't say that. They just can't say that. I mean, there's like a handful. But that's why you don't know who I am. See, it's more important to me that I was here with my wife and my grandson. That's more important to me than whether you have my records or know who I am. Does that make sense? And that's just silly. I mean, think about it. I was with my wife and my grandson. Because my kids, I'm not disenfranchised from my kids. I'm not estranged from my children. Because we didn't get a divorce. Because I sowed into my relationship with my wife. I sowed into my marriage. And I sowed into my family. I remember we were talking with Mikey, and we were talking about it once. Man, it's a long time ago. He said, date night. You got to have date night. Every week you got to turn everything on. You got to have date night. And I started doing that, like from 6 to 10. Shut down everything, family. And make sure you go on date night. I don't know if you know that. You did that.
You're welcome.
Yeah. and then my pastor that married us. Here's something really cool. The pastor that married my wife and I in 1988, after we had 2 kids, married my youngest daughter and her husband 3 years ago. After a son. So 3 years ago yesterday, in fact. So it's just really 2 days ago. It's just awesome to see what will happen. See, because God's all into reconciliation, right? And that's his whole deal. He's in the business of that. He's on.
Just waiting for it.
And he's all about rewriting your history or rewriting your past or your future. I mean, this is what he loves to do. Look at all the guys in the Bible and how he rewrote either their past or their future. I mean, time and time again, we read that in the Old Testament. We see that model. Well, he absolutely, completely rewrote my past. Absolutely. And so now we have this, this marriage that's happening today that wasn't happening, but it's because I had to sow into it. I had to make a choice. Am I going to do what? See, God's not going to look at me and go, oh yeah, great job on those record sales and those ticket sales. I mean, no, that's not what he's judging us on. He's judging us on your marriage, if you're married. Because that's, besides the relationship you have with him, that's the most important relationship you have on earth. The whole God relationship is modeled after a marriage. That's what that whole Chick-fil-A thing was about. Because if the biblical definition of marriage isn't between a man and a woman, then this is compromised. Because that's how he set it up. That's what the debate of it was about. They never said anything about homosexuality. Because the enemy, his job is to do what? Pervert. If he can pervert the definition of marriage based on the Bible, he wins. Because then now we have the supernatural, now we have the spiritual realm trickle effect. The invisible stuff starts now, that starts happening. You know? Look at Ishmael, right? Abraham jumps in. Ishmael is born. He's not the son of promise. What do you think this whole thing in the Middle East has been about? For roughly 6,000 years, 6,000 years. It's all about that. It's all about that. One's a son of promise, and the other one's of the flesh. That's what this is about. The whole thing's about that. So what we do is we have to make the choices like we were talking about. Are you going to serve God even if there is no money? Are you going to serve God, right? And you brought that up, right? I said you were jumping the story. I can't stand before the Lord knowing I've succeeded in this realm, music, yet I've been divorced and I'm estranged from my family. That's not going to jive with me. Come on. I'm not an idiot. See, I'm not a poser. I've been doing this a long time. This is a 32, 36-year-old phase you're looking at right here. You know? So I made those choices, and they were hard to make, but so I did what God would have me do.
But that gave you no better standing before totally effing up your music career and your marriage. For all anybody knows, in your heart is just as effed up. It's not because of anything you've done.
Sure it is.
It's only because you're responding, and the only response you have is through the Spirit.
Right, but I
And the
responded
Spirit
correctly.
produces that fruit.
Yeah, but that's
You're
the
not-
act on my part. I responded correctly to what the Lord would have me do.
And it's not because you did a date night.
Sure it
It's
is.
not because you did something right.
Sure it is. Absolutely.
It's all been done for you at the cross.
No, that's not true. That's not how that works. I know
That's
what
what
you're
righteousness
saying, but
is.
that's not actually how it works, because the cross, you know what the cross has done for Marilyn Manson? Everything. But until Marilyn Manson makes the action and the choices and does the work of repentance and then walking in that revelation, it's null and void to him.
There's no doubt.
Is that not true?
In terms of application.
Right. If Marilyn Manson doesn't make doesn't do the stuff to align himself with God, that cross means nothing to him, and does absolutely nothing for him. He's not redeemed. Is that not true?
That is absolutely correct.
Right. So I made the choices to submit to the Lord, to sow into my family, to do what is required of me. I was created for good works.
But you were made a saint at the cross,
No one's questioning that.
and you're being sanctified in your character.
Yeah, but no one's questioning that. But
You're
I have
justified
to.
already.
But I have to do the act of walking in that understanding and in that revelation. I have to say no to fornication. I have to say no to adultery.
But
I
what
have
I'm
to say
saying
no
is
to
you don't get
drugs.
the glory for that. Christ gets the glory.
I don't think he's saying that.
He's not saying, he's not trying to get the glory for that. We have to make choices. The choices put before
Did
us.
anybody get the impression that I was boring in myself?
No,
No.
absolutely not.
Thank you.
No, we have to make
Not in
choices.
that statement.
If we're presented with the choices, we have to make the right choices.
Right. And I
We
made
can
the
make the
choice.
wrong choice and we pay the price for that.
Right. And I made the choice to make the right choice, and that was to do what God would have me do. God doesn't want you to pursue a life of a rock and roll dream if your marriage is suffering.
Exactly.
He wants you to sow into your covenant relationship with your wife, because God's all about that.
Yes.
See, and He wants you to sow then into your children if you have children, and He wants you to make sure you obey at least the 10 of the commandments that are available to you, and that's not to commit adultery, not to fornicate, not to murder, not to steal, not to lie, right? So those are the acts that I chose by my own strength. I'm going to choose to obey you, Father, and align my life with your covenant precepts that are found in the Word. The stuff that I'm already supposed to be doing because I call on your Son, Jesus, as my Messiah. but I wasn't doing them. I was compromised, and I was seduced. So I sowed into the Lord, I sowed into the Word, and started sowing into what I would have to do as a legitimate believer. And that meant not making choices towards my career, because, well, now I'm not going to disappear for 3 months. You know, we created a 3-week rule. You know, if I'm going to go on tour for if I'm going to go on tour, at the 3-week mark, either I come home or I make a way for her to be on tour with me. I'm trying to save my marriage. And here we are. I've got proof. It's called fruit, brother, not praising myself. It's called fruit. Right? I've got big, freaking juicy fruit. My marriage, my children, serve the Lord, you know, and I'm still married with the same girl. That's huge fruit.
Yeah.
A lot of these guys don't have.
But you know, we have to be careful about thinking that we know if someone's in the will of God or not in the will of God. Because it's just like I said, you know, fear shows up. And if a bystander saw Joseph and God allowed the trials of Joseph because there was a greater need to save his people, and a lot of bystanders would have thought that he's done something wrong and he's not in God's will because he's in prison, he's away from his country. 400 years later, Moses is raised in Pharaoh's palace to accomplish another purpose. You know, we have to be careful about what we think we see in people's lives.
What's in the heart?
All right.
And the choices
So,
that we make.
yeah, so all this to say, as you guys pursue what you believe, hopefully you know that this is what God would have you do. Because if you think or feel that it's God's will, you need to get to the point where you know it's God's will, because He only knows those that do the will of the Father. You have to know what God's will is. You know? So we're going to assume that this is what you've been called to do, or we're going to try and help you get to this point of understanding whether this is what you should be doing. All that to say, you have to make sure your personal life. See, the hour you spend on stage, that's easy. What you do on stage, that's the easy part. It's the 23 other hours of the day that I'm talking about. And those 23 hours, do you understand what I'm saying there?
You mean like writing and rehearsing?
Oh my God. Those 23 hours, man, that's what we want to address. We want to address and make sure, you know what? You can think you're doing all right, and you're doing all this great stuff for God or whatever, you know, nonsense you've convinced yourself of. But if your lifestyle isn't aligned with what the Word says, man, you're just going to hurt yourself. Because again, you're looking at compromising all this stuff in the name of God. That's a huge deception. So that's what we're going to touch on tomorrow. Deeper stuff like that, you know. And then we're going to get to some practical stuff too with Mikey. Are we calling it, or are we doing something else? What are we doing? What do you want to do?
Well,
Thanks for your time, guys.
yeah. Thanks, Alan.
Oh, yeah.